Welcome to r/Pettyrevenge, where the revenge is small but the satisfaction is huge. A couple of months ago, during the first half of my workday, my belt broke as I was buckling it back after using the restroom. So, at lunch, I run to the local Wally World and pick up a cheap replacement until I can buy a higher quality one. Go in, buy a belt, then head back to my car. I get back to my car and put the belt on while standing at my car. As I'm putting on the belt, I notice a car has stopped in the aisle waiting on me to back out. It was busy and the lot was full, but I had lucked into the first spot next to the handicapped space. Primo spot. I guess she got annoyed with waiting, and as I was finishing putting my belt on, I guess she thought I had decided just to piss in the parking lot in the middle of the day. She rolls her window down to confront me. "Did you just piss in the parking lot?" "What? What are you talking about?" "You did! You just pissed in this parking lot! Disgusting!" "Hey, moron, who the hell pisses in the middle of a parking lot? I was putting on a belt I just bought. Mind your own dang business." "BS, you just pissed in the parking lot." "Lady, you're a moron. I hope you aren't planning on getting this parking spot because you ain't getting it." "Like hell I ain't." Then the standoff begins. No way in hell am I letting her get this space, even if I have to sit there all afternoon. We sit there 5 minutes, 10 minutes, at least 15 minutes, with her even complaining to a cart wrangler about it. He doesn't do anything, of course. Then I see my chance. A big truck parked about 5 to 6 spots further down the aisle is leaving and needs space to back out, and she's blocking him from doing so. She backs up a bit and also gets closer to the cars on the other side of the aisle so the truck has room to back out. This allows another car coming up the aisle to get behind the truck. I back out of the spot really quick as the truck is backing out. She can't get around the truck to get my spot. The car coming up the aisle gets behind the truck, and because Idiot Lady has moved her car over, the car coming up the aisle goes around her and gets my spot. Idiot Lady didn't have a turn signal on or anything since she had sat there so long. I circle back around the next aisle to see her reaction. She lays on the horn and yells at the car who pulled into my spot. She is livid. Red face, cursing, etc. The driver tells her to F off. In the meantime, another car has come and gotten the space the truck backed out of, so Idiot Lady had to keep circling to find a spot. Man, it was sweet. OP, it sounds like you really pissed her off? Our next Reddit post is from Fox Got Socks. I'm an attorney and used to work at a state government office, where I had 2 supervisors, one for my practice group and one for my section, who, from the very beginning, decided to make it their business to treat me like garbage. Section chief had a habit of sitting on client questions for days, then assigning them to me. Then, when the client would inevitably ask why it was taking so long to do their stuff, she'd respond only that I was the one working on that stuff, making it look like the delay was my fault. Similarly, the group supervisor's favorite cockweaselry was to try to get me in trouble with both clients and higher-ups in our office for not doing things fast enough, despite the fact that she would procrastinate for weeks on reviewing and signing off on work I actually did very fast indeed. But what these hose beasts didn't know was that A, I was saving all the emails they sent me that would include information like dates they assigned me work, etc. And B, one of the aforementioned higher-ups was my former boss during my externship in law school. So he liked me and knew I wasn't lazy or an idiot. So one day, group supervisor assigned me a question from our client agency involving a citizen's public records request, and I prepared a draft response within an hour and sent it back to her. I needed her to sign off on it before I advised the client. But despite my getting a red receipt for my email, she didn't respond for the rest of the day, or the rest of the week. Edit. In response to a question raised in the comments, I had a policy of following up with people when I didn't get timely responses, but had previously been told by the supervisor that she didn't need reminding about my emails, so I stopped doing that with her. The client was supposed to answer the records request within a tight deadline under the law, and eventually emailed the group supervisor to ask where the hell their answer was. The group supervisor finally woke up and forwarded her original email assigning me the work to section chief to complain that I didn't do it in good time. And then section chief forwarded that to the client and told them it was my fault it wasn't done yet. So I, having finally had enough, rubbed my little hands together in delight and proceeded to 1. Reply all to section chief's email to client, attaching my email to group supervisor containing the draft response. I innocently wrote, "Apologies for the inconvenience, client." Our office rule is to wait for supervisory sign-off before providing advice, but I've nevertheless attached draft advice prepared on date. Group supervisor and section chief, do you agree with this advice? May client act upon it? 2. Forward that response to former boss and very politely ask him, in instances where there's a tight time frame to respond to a client question, is it okay to provide the client with a provisional draft advice like this within the deadline, but let them know a supervisor needs a little more time to do the review and sign off? The client ended up praising me for my efforts to get a response to him in a timely fashion. And former boss thanked me for my question, but said it should never be an issue in the first place. Then sent an office-wide notice to remind supervisors that they must provide necessary sign-offs on advice within deadlines, and must never blame those under them for delays in front of clients because that affects the image of the whole office. He attached the emails in my matter as an example of what supervisors should not do. So literally everyone saw what incompetent clowns they were. Our next Reddit post is from Brother P. This happened about 20 years ago when I was a teacher in a small high school. There was one teacher who was toxic and would say inappropriate things to students about the teachers he didn't like. He once told some students of mine that I didn't get invited to parties because I was a stiff. His dislike for me stemmed from the fact that I was vying for promotion to vice principal and he felt threatened by it. He did a bunch of other things that gave me a slam dunk workplace harassment case against him, but I never pursued it. One day, he brought in donuts and left them in the staff room. However, being the guy he was, he put little toothpick flags in them with everyone's name on them but mine. He also left a note on the table saying, "Help yourself, not you, OP." The one with his name on it was one of those powdered jelly-filled things. In full view of some of the other teachers who were gobsmacked by his behavior, I took a straw, sucked all the jelly out of it, then refilled it with mustard. Then I put it back into the box, unwrapped my sandwich, and waited. He came into the lunchroom with a shit-eating grin on his face as he looked at me and nodded. I munched my carrot sticks. One of the women thanked him for the donuts. He just smirked, picked his up, and took a big bite of it right in front of me. The look of horror, confusion, and disgust on his face was priceless. Then Wanderson90 adds this below. I have a satisfying story about donuts too. Not really revenge, more like instant karma, but I'll share anyways. I was a freshman in high school and was in the halls during class for whatever reason. Anyways, this senior kid comes strolling in my general direction with a big box of donuts. He lifts the lid and motions for me to grab one, but pulls the box away at the last second. A classic, aha, gotcha moment. Well, unfortunately for him, he yanked them away from me a little too quickly, and the entire box of donuts slips out of his hands and directly into a very conveniently placed garbage can, lid open and upside down. There was no hope in salvaging even one poor donut. He scurried away in a huff, and I walked back to class with a huge grin on my face. Man, that's even better than getting a free donut. Our next Reddit post is from DiffyQ Girl. This happened almost a year ago. At the time, I was taking a bus regularly to a hospital for chemotherapy, which left me extremely weak and nauseous. So, when possible, I sat in the handicap section near the front of the bus. Occasionally, people would ask me to move. It's a bus to a hospital, so a lot of people need the disabled seats. And I'm young and outwardly looked healthy after my hair had started growing back. Of course, they'd understand when I explained that I needed the seat. Enter bitchy lady, a smartly dressed woman in her 60s. She asked for my seat, and I explained that I just had chemotherapy and I need the seat. She calls me lazy, calls me a liar, and tells me that I don't look sick. I'm too exhausted and nauseous to deal with this BS. I've been trying to not throw up for the last half hour. F it, I decide, and aim. I puke all over her nice shoes. She screams and jumps back. I wish I'd said something witty right then, but I was just busy puking. She stood quietly, red-faced, at the other end of the bus and left me alone after that. In retrospect, I feel like a butthole for making the bus driver clean up my puke. I was too much of a wreck to help. I could barely stand up, though I did apologize to him. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision, and I didn't really think that consequence through. But man, was it satisfying to puke all over that bitch. Edit. Thanks for all the kind words, everyone. I've been cancer-free for 6 months now and getting stronger. I'm gonna take this brief moment in the spotlight to plug donating blood. It really helps cancer patients and all sorts of other patients. I receive several blood donations per month, and each time it felt like coming back from the dead. I mean, I can't speak for the bus driver, but personally, I would gladly clean up a cancer survivor's puke if it means I got to see an entitled lady got puked on. Hell, give me front row seats. I'll even sit in the splatter zone for that kind of performance. Our next Reddit post is from EQ and Civ Fanatic. 5 years ago, my wife and I started new jobs in a new city, right down the road from each other's offices, employed with the same government agency. Our schedules were roughly similar for several months before she went to a night shift, so she would occasionally encounter the same people or vehicles in our commute. The commute consisted mostly of 2-lane roads with no passing. One day, my wife gets cut off by a fancy black sports car with a vanity plate. Let's say Dick Law. He had been tailgating her for nearly 10 minutes already, as she had the nerve to only go 5 miles per hour over the speed limit on a busy downtown road. So the moment he could, he cut into the other lane and passed her, giving her maybe only a foot or two of space after doing so, and forcing her to hit the brakes suddenly in response. She honked her horn at him justifiably in response. To her surprise, Dick Law stopped his car in front of her. Dick Law gets out of his vehicle and is an older balding male in a fancy tailored suit. He starts marching towards my wife's much cheaper car, shouting and ranting with his fists balled up. And he hit her car a couple times. Thankfully, it didn't get worse, because my wife stayed in her car and already had her phone out calling 911. Incidentally, that's also her place of employment at the time, and she was wearing a uniform which bears a bit of a resemblance to a sworn officer's uniform. Dick Law apparently notices all this, apparently also taking note of her name tag after putting a crack in her windshield, and immediately heads back to his car to drive off. About a month later, my wife ends up having to talk to internal affairs. A prominent member of the legal community made an official complaint against her for reckless driving and aggressive behavior. Internal affairs thankfully is run by some awesome people, and we had the physical damage on her vehicle that we photographed, a partial recording of his shouting from the 911 call, and the responding officer's report. The complaint was dismissed as unfounded. Due to Dick Law's prominent status as an attorney locally for almost 30 years, nothing more could come of it legally. My wife moved to night shifts and my own schedule adjusted slightly, and I was working a typical 9 to 5, hitting home from an office along mostly the same route that my wife followed. Lo and behold, I soon discovered that with my adjusted hours, I was leaving from the same parking garage as Dick Law every day of the week at the same time. For the past nearly 5 years, I waited for him almost every day of the week and made sure to drive home in front of him at exactly the speed limit. This easily extended his home commute time by 5 to 10 minutes each day, depending on how much other traffic was on the road. He tried tailgating me, changing his hours that he was at the office, and multiple other ways to escape this delay in getting home. But thanks to an accomplice in his office, I never had a problem learning his schedule or what vehicle he was driving when he sold his old one. During times when I would take a vacation, I had comrades from my department take up the mantle of driving slowly home to inconvenience this guy. I've gone through 3 cars in the ensuing time frame, but he never seemed to want to make a confrontation of it. As of 3 months ago, I moved to a new office building and Dick Law retired shortly after. The saga's ended, and I can only assume he's off to enjoy a retirement of kicking babies or whatever it is lawyers do in their free time. It was a good run, and would always fill me with satisfaction at the end of each day, no matter what I faced. Down in the comments, stereotypical teen says, "My father swears up and down that there are people paid to drive slowly, like they have a network of people just to mess with him. I now realize my dad may be the douchebag on this commute." Our next Reddit post is from Do You Even Lift? I never really believed in the stereotype of the condescending, holier-than-thou vegan. I figured it was an invention of omnivores that like to make fun of vegans and project some kind of judgmental attitude on them. And then I met her. She came into this really solid Asian fusion restaurant that does carry out. She was talking to her friend, and the gist of the conversation was that she was appalled that she was even in this restaurant. The food didn't even count as vegan since they also served meat. In fact, for the 10 minutes that I knew her, she basically had nothing nice to say about anyone or anything. It was pretty spectacular listening to one person manage to say nothing nice for 10 minutes. She could win gold in the Butthole Olympics. I'd been standing in line patiently waiting to place an order with one person in front of me. As she walked in, that person finished ordering, at which point she breezed by me like I didn't even exist. "I'd like a tofu lo mein." The woman behind the counter looked at me and I coughed politely. "I'm sorry, I was here first." This elicited the biggest, most "How dare you waste my time!" eye roll I've ever seen, and she wordlessly stepped back. I ordered a chicken fried rice. Then she ordered her tofu lo mein and we stepped back to wait for our food. 10 minutes later, the first order popped up, at which point this woman, mindlessly chatting with her friend about how much someone they both knew is a total bitch, swiped the order without thinking and without a thank you and stormed for the door, in a desperate hurry to ruin other people's evenings somewhere. My first thought was, isn't it likely that my order finished before yours? And I almost said it. And then I realized she was storming out with the meal she really didn't want. The next meal popped up about 2 minutes later. I grabbed it, knowing there was a solid chance it was tofu, thanked the very nice woman behind the counter, and left without stopping to open it. Afraid that if I wasted a second's time, that angry Shu might have stormed back in and corrected her oversight. I triumphantly ate a tofu lo mein back at home that night. Well, I ate the lo mein and picked around the tofu. I don't know if that harpy returned demanding her correct meal, or if she just got home, realized it was chicken fried rice, and threw it away dejectedly. I just hope she felt some level of the misery she seemed to enjoy forcing on everyone around her. That was r/Pettyrevenge, and if you like this video then subscribe to my channel because I put out new Reddit videos every single day.